Have you ever heard of a place that welcomes you with a smile, but never truly lets you leave? A place where the lights stay warm, the music never stops, and the hallways twist and turn like they're alive. They call it Hotel California, a destination for the lost, and a prison for the unlucky. Our story begins with a man named Daniel, driving through the vast California desert long after midnight. His eyes were heavy, his mind exhausted, and he was searching desperately for a place to rest. The highway stretched endlessly before him, a black, silent ribbon cutting through the dark landscape. Then, just as he was about to give up, a glowing sign flickered into view through the dust and haze. Hotel California Vacancies. The building looked old, almost ancient, but strangely inviting. Golden lights shimmered behind beautiful stained glass windows. Soft music flowed out into the night, a slow, hypnotic melody that seemed to be calling directly to him. Pulling over, Daniel stepped out of his car and walked towards the entrance. Inside, the lobby felt warm and timeless. He saw plush velvet chairs, ornate old chandeliers, and walls covered with paintings of strangers who seemed to watch him as he walked by. Behind the grand wooden counter stood a woman in a striking red dress, smiling a smile that seemed just a little too wide. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice like silk. "We've been expecting you." Daniel froze, a prickle of unease running down his spine. "How?" "I didn't make a reservation." The woman simply tilted her head, her smile never faltering. "Everyone who finds us was meant to." He tried to shake off the strange feeling. He was tired. That was all. He took the key and went up to his room. It was beautiful polished dark wood, soft, glowing lamps, and a vintage radio humming that same slow, haunting melody he'd heard from the road. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, finally exhaling with relief, until he noticed something odd. There were no windows, not a single one. He tried to sleep, but the music from the hallway seemed to grow louder. He could hear footsteps, muffled voices, and soft laughter, as if a party was happening just outside his door. His curiosity, mixed with a growing sense of unease, got the better of him. Daniel opened his door and stepped out. The hallway had changed. It seemed longer, stretching further than it possibly could have. The lights were dimmer now, casting long, dancing shadows. The air was colder. He followed the source of the music down the long corridor until he reached a grand ballroom. Inside, dozens of people were dancing. They were dressed in elegant, old-fashioned clothes, their faces pale and stiff, their smiles carved too deeply into their cheeks. They moved in slow, graceful circles, as if they were replaying a memory they couldn't escape. A tall man in a sharp black suit approached Daniel, his movements unnervingly smooth. "You made it," the man said, his voice calm and low. "Most people only hear the music. You actually found the door." Daniel tried to laugh it off, but his heart was pounding. Something was deeply wrong here. The dancers looked alive, and yet not alive. Their eyes were empty, their movements too perfect, like puppets on invisible strings. He turned to the man and asked, "What is this place?" And then they began to whisper. 100 voices, all speaking at once. A terrifying chorus filling the silent room. "Stay with us. You can never leave. You belong here now." Daniel ran. He bolted from the ballroom and into the hallway, which now stretched into an impossible infinity, twisting and folding in on itself like a living maze. Every door he desperately threw open only led to another identical hallway. Every turn he took brought him right back to the same dim corridor. The hotel didn't want him to leave. It wanted him to stay. Forever. He saw an elevator and jabbed the button, praying for escape. The doors slid open, revealing the ballroom again. The dancers were now standing perfectly still, smiling their unnerving smiles directly at him. Waiting, Daniel screamed for help, pounding on walls that felt disturbingly like warm skin. The hotel itself seemed to breathe around him, pulsing with something ancient and hungry. He felt trapped, consumed. At last, through the disorienting maze, he saw it. The lobby. With his last ounce of strength, he sprinted toward the glowing red exit sign, his heart racing, his lungs burning. But the woman in the red dress stepped directly into his path, blocking his way. Her smile was gone. "You can check out anytime you like," she whispered, and as she spoke, her eyes turned into bottomless pools of black. "But you can never leave." He shoved past her and threw himself at the front door. It wouldn't open. No matter how hard he pulled, how desperately he slammed his body against it, the door remained locked, as if it were welded shut. Behind him, he heard footsteps approaching not one pair, but hundreds of them, slow, steady, hungry. The sound of the entire hotel closing in on him. When they caught him, the lights flickered one last time, and then everything went silent. The next morning, Daniel's car was found abandoned on the side of the highway. The Hotel California sign was gone. The building itself had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Only the music remained a faint, haunting melody drifting through the desert wind. Some travelers swear they still see that glowing sign on certain dark nights. Some say they can hear soft laughter carried on the breeze in the dunes, and some claim that if you follow the music, you'll find the hotel. But beware, Ned. Once you step inside, you'll never walk out again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay safe. How there? Have you ever heard of a hotel so haunted that the walls seem to breathe at night? A place so old, so cursed, that guests don't check out because they want to, they leave. Because something forces them to. This is the story of the Stanley Hotel. The very place that inspired Stephen King's The Shining. A real-life birthplace of nightmares. Our story begins over a century ago, nestled in the silent, imposing mountains of Colorado. A grand hotel built for luxury, designed for peace yet hiding a darkness so deep that even daylight struggles to fully penetrate its corners. In its early days, people said the hotel was breathtakingly beautiful during the day, a symbol of high society and mountain elegance. But after midnight, when the last guest had retired and the fires in the hearths died down, it felt alive. A woman named Emma checked in one cold winter evening. She was escaping a broken relationship, a shattered heart, and was just hoping for some quiet solitude to piece herself back together. The front desk staff, with knowing but unspoken glances, warned her that the hotel was nearly empty for the season. But Emma didn't mind. In fact, she welcomed the emptiness. She felt strangely drawn to the place, an unexplainable pull she couldn't quite put her finger on. Her room was on the 4th floor, an area notorious for its paranormal activity, though she didn't know it at the time. The hallway leading to her door was unusually long, the air strangely cold, clinging to her skin. The corridor was lit by flickering, old-fashioned bulbs that hummed like faint whispers trapped inside glass. It felt less like a hotel and more like a passage into another time. That first night, sleep was impossible. Emma tossed and turned, the silence of the old building amplifying every creak and groan of its ancient frame. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, pacing. They seemed to come from the far end, getting closer, then fading away, only to start again. Heart pounding, she crept to the door and peered through the peephole. The long, humming hallway was completely, utterly empty. She tried to rationalize. The old building settling, the wind, her own tired mind playing tricks. She tried to ignore it, burying her head under the pillows. But then, a new sound drifted up from below. A piano. Soft, delicate, melancholic notes echoing through the walls, filling the dead air of the night. She assumed it must be a late-night pianist in the hotel bar. Annoyed but also a little curious, she put on her robe and went downstairs to check. But as she descended the grand staircase, she found the entire lobby shrouded in darkness. The music had stopped. She found the piano, its heavy wooden cover closed, a thick layer of dust coating its surface. She ran a finger over it. It was cold to the touch. The next morning, she mentioned it to a member of the staff. He just smiled a tired, knowing smile and said, "No one has played that piano for years. They say the original owner, F.O. Stanley, still plays it sometimes, long after his death." That's when a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air began to settle deep in her bones. The second night, things escalated. At exactly 3:04 a.m., Emma was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of children laughing, giggles and the pitter-patter of tiny footsteps, running up and down the hallway right outside her door. It sounded like they were playing a game of tag. Exasperated and now genuinely unnerved, she flung the door open, ready to tell them off. But there was nothing. Couste cold still air rushing past her, so palpable it felt as if something invisible had just brushed right through her. Back in her room, the lights began to flicker erratically. The television switched on by itself, blasting a wall of deafening static. And buried deep inside that white noise, she could almost make out a whispering voice. Then, the bathroom door, which she was certain she had closed, creaked open on its own. Emma's breath hitched in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Against her better judgment, she stepped toward the dark doorway, her body shaking. The light inside the bathroom flickered on for a split second, and in that brief, horrifying flash, she saw it. A figure reflected in the mirror, a woman dressed in an old-fashioned, turn-of-a-century maid's uniform. Her hair was dark, dripping with water, and her eyes were staring straight into Emma's through the mirror's reflection. Emma stumbled back with a strangled cry. When she blinked, forcing her eyes open again, the woman was gone. The bathroom was empty. Panicked, she scrambled for the door to her room, desperate to get out. But the brass handle wouldn't turn. It was stuck fast, as if someone was holding it firmly from the other side. She pulled and twisted, but it wouldn't budge. At the same moment, the temperature in the room plummeted so fast she could see her own breath crystallize in the air. The cold was biting, unnatural. And then she heard it, a voice, right behind her. Soft. Female. A chilling whisper that seemed to slither directly into her ear. "Why are you in my room?" Emma froze, every muscle in her body locked in pure terror. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her body wouldn't move. The whisper came again, closer this time, so close she could feel a cold breath on the back of her neck. "You're not supposed to be here." A wave of primal fear finally broke her paralysis. Emma didn't scream, she just bolted. She finally wrenched the door open and ran barefoot down the long, empty hallway, tears of terror freezing on her cheeks. She didn't stop until she reached the lobby, collapsing in a heap in front of the night porter's desk. By morning, she was checked out. She threw the room keys onto the counter and fled without a word. The staff didn't ask any questions. I never do. They've seen that look of sheer, unadulterated terror too many times before. The woman Emma saw is believed to be Elizabeth Wilson, a former head housekeeper who was injured in an explosion in room 217 back in 1911. Her spirit is said to still tend to the room, and she's not fond of unmarried couples staying there together. Emma was alone, But maybe her presence and what the spirit considered her domain was enough to provoke her. The Stanley Hotel remains open to this day, a beautiful and terrifying monument to its own past. Guests and ghost hunters from all over the world flock to it, hoping for an experience. And they often get one. People still report hearing phantom footsteps in empty hallways, the ghostly laughter of children playing outside closed doors, and the sad, spectral melody of a piano playing itself late into the night. And on the 4th floor, the spirit of a woman in an old dress is still seen wandering the halls, sometimes asking strangers, in a barely audible whisper, why they're in her room. Some say the hotel holds the spirits of those who died there, their souls trapped within its walls for eternity. Others believe the building itself, saturated with over a century of human emotion and tragedy, has become alive, a conscious entity that feeds on the fear of its guests. But everyone who has experienced its chilling embrace agrees on one thing. If you stay at the Stanley Hotel long enough, if you listen closely in the dead of night, something will eventually come looking for you. Thank you for watching. If you've ever had a paranormal experience, share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. Have you ever seen someone standing in the rain, completely still, as if the storm itself was waiting for them? People say the most dangerous ghosts are the quiet ones, the ones who don't scream, don't chase, don't ask for help. They just stand there, watching. This is the story of the girl under the umbrella. It began on a lonely road outside a small town. A college student named Aaron was driving home late one night. Rain hammered his windshield so hard he could barely see. The streetlights flickered in the distance, and thunder rolled across the fields like distant footsteps. That's when he saw her, a small figure, standing completely still by the side of the road, holding a pale blue umbrella. She wasn't moving. She wasn't signaling for help. She was just staring down at her feet. Aaron slowed the car. The girl looked no older than 12. Her posture was stiff, almost frozen in place, and the umbrella completely covered her face. The rain poured down all around her, but not a single drop seemed to touch her clothes, not one. Something about it felt deeply wrong, but Aaron's conscience overpowered his fear. He pulled over and rolled down the passenger window. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride?" The girl slowly raised her head. Her face was hidden in shadow, her dark hair dripping like black threads. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink. She simply pointed straight ahead toward the long, dark road that vanished into the forest. Aaron swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. You want me to take you there?" The girl nodded. Once a slow, deliberate motion. Against every instinct screaming inside him, Aaron unlocked the passenger door. The girl climbed in. She didn't close her umbrella. She didn't look at him. She didn't even breathe loud enough to hear. Instantly, the temperature inside the car plummeted. Aaron's breath fogged the air. The radio, which had been playing softly, glitched into harsh static. Even the engines sounded strained, like the car itself wanted to turn around and flee. As they drove deeper into the forest, the girl finally spoke. Her voice wasn't childish. It was hollow, layered, like two people speaking at once. "Do you see the house?" Aaron looked ahead. Through the thick sheets of rain, an old wooden house appeared abandoned, broken, its windows shattered like empty eyes. The forest pressed in tightly around it, as if trying to swallow the structure whole. "No one lives there," Aaron whispered, his voice trembling. The girl responded softly, her layered voice sending a chill down his spine. "I do." Aaron slammed on the brakes. His heart pounded so violently he felt dizzy. The girl slowly, methodically, lowered her umbrella. That's when he saw her face. Her skin was as pale as drowned bone. Her eyes were completely washed out, a milky white with no pupils, and water trickled steadily from her hair, even though the umbrella had never moved. Aaron stared in absolute horror as the girl reached toward him with a trembling, soaked hand. "Take me home," she whispered. But the house wasn't a home. It was a grave. He didn't open the door for her. He didn't breathe. He simply floored the accelerator, speeding away from the house, skidding through the mud and rain. The girl's voice filled the car, echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You left me in the storm." The voice grew louder, more distorted. "You didn't come back." It was a chorus of accusation. "You promised." Aaron risked a glance at the passenger seat. It was empty. The blue umbrella lay open on the fabric, dripping water onto the floor. He didn't stop driving until he reached the bright lights of his town. When he finally stumbled out of the car, shaking and drenched in a cold sweat, he noticed something horrifying. Tiny, wet footprints led from the passenger side, across the back seat, onto the road behind the car, and vanished into the shadows. For weeks, Aaron avoided that road, but the nightmares didn't stop. He dreamed of standing in the rain, unable to move, a blue umbrella held over him, and a pale, cold hand gripping his shoulder from behind. Eventually, the locals told him the truth. Years ago, a young girl vanished during a severe storm. She was last seen walking toward the woods with a blue umbrella. They searched for days. They found the umbrella outside that old, abandoned house, but they never found the girl. Now, whenever it rains, she waits on that same road, hoping someone will finally take her home. And once she enters your car, they say she never fully leaves. So, if you're ever driving on a stormy night and you see a child standing under a blue umbrella, don't stop. Don't even slow down. And whatever you do, don't ever let her inside, because the second you hear her whisper, "Take me home," your fate is already sealed. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy stories that stay with you long after the lights are on, make sure to follow for more. Sleep well. Have you ever heard of a place where the sea doesn't just take lives? It keeps time, where the waves whisper names you've never spoken, and something waits beneath the surface, not human, not animal. Something older. They say every coastline has its ghosts, but on the edge of a forgotten harbor, there's a legend locals refuse to speak aloud. A story about a man known only as the Fisherman. It begins with a traveler named Miles. He came to the coastal village, searching for quiet, renting a small cabin overlooking the black water. The town felt deserted, the air thick with salt and something colder like fear soaked into the wind. On his first night, Miles walked toward the docks. The moon floated low, painting the ocean silver. Boats creaked gently, ropes tapping against wooden posts like fingers, knocking from beneath the waves. As he explored, he noticed a man standing at the far end of the pier. Tall, still, leaning over the dark water as if listening to it breathe. The man wore a rain-beaten coat and a broken fisherman's hat pulled low over his face. His hands long, pale, scarred, gripped an old fishing net. Miles called out, "Sir? You okay?" The man didn't move, didn't turn, didn't breathe. He just whispered something into the ocean. The voice was hoarse, trembling, almost mournful. Miles stepped back. Something about the figure made his stomach twist. The next morning, the villagers told him quietly, "No one fishes there anymore. Not since the storm." "Not since he drowned?" Miles asked. "Who drowned?" They avoided his eyes. "Just don't go near the pier after dark." But curiosity is a dangerous thing. That evening, Miles heard knocking, soft, rhythmic tapping against his cabin window. When he opened the curtains, no one was there, only wet footprints leading down toward the water. Drawn by instinct, Miles followed them back to the pier, back to the place he swore he wouldn't return to. The fisherman stood there against some clothes, same posture, staring into the endless dark as the sea churned below him. But this time, the man turned. His face was half-hooded, sea-soaked, covered in tangled strands of seaweed. One eye hung lifeless, while the other stared with a hunger that didn't belong to the living. He raised his dripping net and whispered, "Help me." Miles froze. His breath vanished. The air around him grew ice. The fisherman stepped forward, water pouring from his clothes like he had just climbed out of a grave beneath the waves. "You took them," the fisherman rasped. "You left me." Miles shook his head in terror. I don't know you." But the fisherman only dragged the net closer, the ropes writhing as if alive. "You didn't save me," he growled. "No one did." Miles stumbled back, but the boards of the pier groaned beneath him, slick with seawater. The fisherman moved with slow, unnatural grace, like the tide pushing him forward. Waves crashed violently against the pier, screaming, alive, pulling at Miles' ankles. Then he saw them. Hands. Dozens of pale, bloated hands rising from the waves. Reaching, grabbing at the wood, trying to climb up. The drowned, the forgotten. The ones the sea had claimed. Miles ran. But the pier seemed endless. Every step dragged like he was running through water. Behind him, the fisherman's voice rose into a guttural howl. "Come back to the sea." Miles reached the shore, just as something cold and slimy wrapped around his ankle. He kicked, screamed, and threw himself onto the sand, scrambling away as a handpail and dripping slid back into the ocean. The fisherman stood at the water's edge, net hanging open like a hungry mouth. "You belong to the deep now," his voice carried on the wind. "And the sea never forgets." Miles fled the village at sunrise. He never spoke of it again, but fishermen who sail near that harbor still report strange things. A lone man standing at the pier, whispering to the water. A rotten face glimpsed between waves. A net drifting beneath the surface, searching. Always searching, and sometimes, just before dawn, you can hear a rough voice rising over the tide. You can run forever. Because the fisherman doesn't chase you on land, he waits. And the sea always finds a way to take back what was promised. In the quiet, forgotten town of Cold Water Fields, a place where time seems to stand still, people still speak in hushed tones about an old, abandoned farm on the edge of town. It's a place everyone instinctively avoids after the sun goes down. It's not because of wild animals lurking in the shadows, or the danger of tripping over broken-down fences in the dark. No, the reason is far more sinister. It's because of the thing that stands vigil in the middle of the overgrown, golden wheat. A silent, solitary figure they call the Scarecrow. The story, like all good local legends, began decades ago. The Miller family, hard-working and optimistic, built a scarecrow they hoped would be their farm's guardian. It wasn't like any other. They fashioned its body from thick bundles of straw and old burlap sacks. 4 hands, they used jagged pieces of rusted metal, sharp and menacing. And for its head, they placed a crown, a jagged, unsettling crown, carved from the wood of an oak tree that had been struck by lightning. This crown was its most defining feature, the source of its name. The Millers weren't just trying to scare away birds. They were performing a sort of folk ritual, hoping this strange effigy would not only protect their crops, but also summon the rain they so desperately needed. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was the history of that lightning-scarred oak. It grew on land that was once a forgotten pagan site, a place of ancient rituals and dark power. The wood itself was imbued with a curse, one that had slept for centuries, waiting for an invitation back into the world. At first, it seemed their strange creation was a miracle. The crows that had plagued their fields vanished overnight. The wheat grew taller and healthier than ever before. The Miller family celebrated their good fortune, convinced their unique scarecrow was a blessing. But in the world of shadows and whispers, every blessing demands a price. And the price for the Millers' prosperity was about to be collected. The first signs were subtle. Isali dismissed. Small farm animals started to disappear without a trace. The neighborhood dogs, once peaceful, began to howl incessantly through the night, their cries directed towards the Miller farm. Neighbors, glancing out their windows in the dead of night, reported seeing a tall, lanky figure moving with an unnatural gait through the wheat fields, even on nights when the air was completely still. One young boy, pedaling his bike home past the farm just after dusk, swore on his life that the scarecrow had slowly tilted its head to watch him pass, its strange wooden crown glinting eerily in the moonlight. The unease in the community grew, but the true horror arrived during the harvest season. The miller's youngest son, a cheerful boy of 7, vanished without a trace. The entire town came together to search for him. They combed every inch of the farm, the dusty barns, the dense surrounding forest, the muddy riverbanks. They found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. The only clue, the only heart-stopping piece of evidence, was a small scrap of his torn blue shirt, snagged on one of the wooden ribs of the scarecrow, fluttering gently in the breeze. The authorities officially ruled his disappearance a tragic accident, a case of a boy wandering off and getting lost. But the town knew better. The light went out of the Miller family's eyes, unable to live with the constant, silent presence of the scarecrow in the memory of their lost son. They abandoned the farm shortly after. The house, the barns, the fields all were left to the mercy of time. No one ever dared to remove the scarecrow. It became a fixture of the local landscape, a dark monument. Its wooden crown remained perfectly intact, its burlap face impossibly unblemished by the sun and rain, even as the farmhouse behind it slowly crumbled into ruin. Years turned into decades. The fields grew wild, the wheat choking out the weeds, creating a golden, rustling sea. And through it all, the scarecrow remained, standing exactly where the Millers had planted it, an unblinking sentinel that seemed more alive than the decaying farm around it. People in Coldwater Fields still see it. They say its presence is a weight on the air. Travelers who take the back road past the old farm report unsettling experiences. They say that if you walk too close to the edge of the field, you can sometimes hear soft, dragging footsteps rustling in the straw behind you, always just out of sight. And when they dare to look back, the scarecrow has shifted its position. It's no longer facing forward. It's leaning, just slightly, in their direction. Its shadows stretching unnaturally long and thin in the fading light, reaching for them. Just 2 summers ago, the legend attracted a new kind of attention. A group of thrill-seeking teens, armed with cameras and a thirst for viral fame, decided to dare the darkness. They crossed the rusted fence and ventured into the field to film a video, laughing and joking, trying to provoke a reaction from the silent figure. Only one of them came back. He stumbled out of the field at dawn, his face pale with terror, his mind shattered. He couldn't form coherent sentences, only whispering fragments of what he'd seen. He said, "The scarecrow isn't there to guard crops. It never was. It's a collector. It collects souls, and that crown, it isn't just a decoration. It's a warning sign, a marker for the cursed ground it rules." The next morning, investigators arrived. They found the teens' abandoned camera equipment scattered in the wheat. But what chilled them to the bone were the deep, heavy impressions in the soil all around the field. It looked as if something massive, something impossibly heavy, had been pacing back and forth all night long, patrolling its territory. But when they looked at the center of the field, the scarecrow stood perfectly still, facing the road, as if it hadn't moved an inch in 50 years. The old-timers in Coldwater Fields will tell you the rules. They're simple, and they're deadly serious. If you're ever near that farm after dark, and you hear the dry rustle of straw right behind you when there's no wind, if you feel a sudden, cold breath on the back of your neck that smells of dust and decay, if you catch a glimpse of a wooden crown glinting in the darkness where it shouldn't be, run. Don't hesitate. Don't look back. Just run. Because the scarecrow is always waiting. It's patient, and once it chooses you, it never, ever lets go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more Tales from the Shadows, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay safe.